Matter selected for topical issues. The first matter is from Deputy Jennifer Whitmore, who wishes to discuss with the Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage the possibility of refusing licence applications for the 2023-2024 hare coursing season. Deputy Minister Jennifer Carroll McNeill, you're dealing with this? Okay.
Thank you very much,
Chair. You've never dealt with coursing before?
Well, I have not.
No. Okay. Deputy Whitmore.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, I want to raise the possibility, and I do believe that we and the Department and the Minister should refuse to grant licences for the upcoming hare coursing season. It will come as no surprise to anyone that I am strongly opposed to hare coursing. I'm strongly opposed from an animal welfare perspective and also from the protection of our biodiversity perspective, because obviously the hare is a protected species under the Wildlife Act. And indeed, I recently brought in a piece of legislation that would prevent the Minister from issuing licences under that Act for the capture of hares for the purpose of hare coursing. I'm not alone in my opposition to hare coursing. In fact, only 9% of the Irish population agree with hare coursing, and that's according to a Red C poll that was conducted a number of years ago. And in fact, it's been reported as well that both line ministers, Minister Noonan and Minister O'Brien, are also both opposed to hare coursing. So I suppose it does raise the question of why we still allow hare coursing and who is making these decisions and why these decisions are being made. But Minister, tonight actually I'm pleased that you're taking this question. I know this isn't your area, but you do have a legal background. And what I want to raise with you today is actually the licence that is issued for the purpose of capturing hares for hare coursing, and whether or not it is actually possible for any club to adhere to those licence conditions as they are currently written, and whether all clubs to this point in time have actually been operating outside the conditions of that licence. So if you have a look at the licence under section 38, the licence grants the Irish Coursing Club a licence to capture live hares subject to the conditions specified hereunder. And condition number 10 specifies that injured or pregnant hares shall not be taken under the licence. Absolutely, categorically, no pregnant hares shall be taken under the licence. I would question whether, I don't believe that it is possible to actually, for anyone to determine whether a hare is pregnant upon capture. And this is obviously, we'll get into the very specifics here of animal biology, but hares, female hares have a gestation period of 50 days, and they can have 3 litters. So they're pregnant for probably half the year. And actually, it would be near impossible to determine in early pregnancy whether or not they are pregnant or not. Now, the Hare Coursing Association have in their guidance, the Hare Coursing Club have in their guidance, they state that any hare which is obviously pregnant shall not be coursed and shall be released back to the wild. Now, the licence doesn't say obviously pregnant. The licence categorically says pregnant. Okay, so there is no possible way that any club would have the capacity to determine whether or not a hare is pregnant. So in my opinion, any female hare that is captured, could possibly be pregnant without anyone understanding or knowing that. And therefore, I believe that actually that the majority of clubs are operating outside the terms of that licence. And I think in light of that fact, I would ask that the Minister review the licence, don't issue them for the upcoming year, because I don't believe that you would have the, I think there needs to be an examination of that and the terminology used. Thank you, Deputy Minister, but I would ask that you consider that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. And I have a policy myself of never ever commenting on somebody and whether they look pregnant or not. Even if they're close to giving birth, I still never comment on it and leave it as a matter for themselves, because of course you never can tell whether somebody is the state of their pregnancy, and I'm not trying to be facetious in any way, but I think you raise a really interesting analysis of the licence application and of the Act. And of course, I'm not in a position, you've asked me there legally, I'm not in a position to make any sort of determination or adjudication of it, but I do think that you've taken an unusually interesting angle to it. And of course, you say that the licence says pregnant. A person or a hare is either pregnant or not pregnant, dead or not dead. There is no ambiguity in the matter, but it raises very important questions under the licensing. I am instructed by the department to say that regulated hare coursing is administered by the, as you're aware, Irish Coursing Club. As I'm sure the Deputy is aware, statutory responsibility for the Greyhound Industry Act is under the Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine. Licences are required by the ICC under the terms of the Wildlife Acts on behalf of their affiliated clubs to facilitate the capture of hares. Regulated coursing meetings take place, as the Deputy is aware, on the open season dates between the 26th of September and the end of February of the following year. However, as the Deputy is aware, the ICC applies to the Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage on an annual basis for each of the aforementioned licences. Where licences are approved by the Minister, the conditions of same are set out and communicated with the ICC as the Deputy has set out. Regional officers of the National Parks and Wildlife Service attend coursing meetings as resources allow to monitor compliance with the conditions of the licences, but I'm not sure how they assess the matter that you have raised, I believe under Section 10 of the licence. Did I hear you correct?
Yes,
Condition 10, forgive me, under Condition 10 of the licence. In the most recent season, NPWS officials monitored some or all elements of some 30 of the meetings held to ensure compliance with the agreed conditions. Veterinary staff from the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine also carry out inspections during the coursing season to monitor compliance with rules governing animal welfare relating to greyhounds and hares. The ICC submits various reports to the NPWS as required by the conditions of the licences, including the control steward reports on the operation of coursing meetings, veterinary reports and hare capture release reports.
Deputy.
And just in relation to the reporting that's required of people with their licence, what they're required to actually produce is information on when the hares were captured, the number of hares captured, if they were injured, whether veterinary care was required. They are not required to actually ascertain or sex the hare. There appears in all the details that have been provided in the reports. I can't see any reference to male or female in there. Indeed, I went through 20 reports of hare coursing clubs, and I can't in any of those reports, which account for probably close to 1,000 hare captures, I cannot see anywhere where they state that a female hare was deemed to be pregnant and was released. And I think, considering that there's 1,000 hares captured and that the sex ratio is 50 to 50, and that a female hare is usually sort of pretty much consistently pregnant or lactating, I find that absolutely bizarre that there is no record of any hares being released on that point. So, Minister, I would ask, I do think, I know this is it is an unusual angle, but I do actually think that the coursing entities have been operating outside. I think it has been impossible to operate within the terms of the conditions that have been set for them. I'm not saying that it's it's on them, but I do think they have been operating outside the terms of that condition of that licence. And in light of that, I would ask that the licence for the upcoming season be refused at this point until the Minister can do an analysis of those conditions and whether or not they are, it is possible to be in compliance with them in the operation of this. Thank you.
I think, as the Deputy says, it is an unusual angle, but it remains eminently fair. It is a condition that is set out by another party, and as you have said, you have gone through the records and not identified not only whether the hares are male or female, but, and I really don't mean this to be funny, but the pregnancy status or otherwise of the female hares. So there's two subsets there of analysis that haven't been completed, and that if it were a condition that you would inspect, that there was some analysis in relation to compliance or otherwise with, as you say, Condition 10. I think that it is important, and it is, it shows your commitment to animal welfare, the extent of the investigations that you've undertaken in relation to that. And I really don't, I appreciate anybody outside looking in on this, you know, could take a wry view of it, but it really is serious, and I appreciate what you're saying. Could I say to you that the licence for the upcoming 2023-24 season is under consideration at present, and that the Deputy's views, alongside all of those interested stakeholders and parties, would be included in those deliberations. The National Parks and Wildlife Service has commenced a major project to review and update wildlife legislation. It's a multi-year project, as I know the Deputy is aware, and it is looking at every facet of our wildlife legislation, including the Acts, European Union regulations and related statutory instruments. In excess of over 200 issues have been identified so far, and each of those would need to be examined and worked through more closely as the project develops. It will involve several phases of public consultation, and the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage expects the first phase of formal consultations to commence later this year. The Department, I'm informed, would welcome the Deputy's input into this review, and I think it would be really valuable input, because it's certainly, it's certainly, like, if you're going to go and set conditions, you have to be serious about those, and if you're not going to test the analysis against it, whether or not you test the pregnancy status or otherwise of the hares, you know, is a different thing. Either don't set the condition, or set the condition and monitor it, but be serious about the thing.